Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is Elizabeth Blumenthal, and I am the Deputy Cultural Attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Warsaw. We are delighted that so many of you were able to join us for this evening's event with author and journalist Jessiką Bruder. We are very excited. You have submitted some really interesting and thoughtful questions. Thank you so much for those, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. Before I turn the microphone over to our moderator, Andrzej Rossa, I wanted to say a big thank you, first of all, obviously to Ms. Bruder for joining us, and also to our wonderful partners at the American Film Festival. This year's edition begins on November 9th, and the special guest is American filmmaker John Waters. And in addition to that, as if that weren't enough, they will be screening the film version of Nomadland at the festival. So many reasons you don't want to miss the American Film Festival. So you can find all the details about it on the festival website or on their Facebook page as well. So I know I'm not the person you're here to see. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful moderator, Andrzej Rossa. Andrzej, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and welcome everyone. Let me briefly introduce a great journalist and writer contributing to a number of leading publications, including the New York Times, Harper's Magazine, and Washington Post, a recipient of major awards, including most recently Ryszard Kapuściński Award, and of course, an author of best-selling and absolutely truly riveting Nomadland. I'm really pleased and honored to welcome Jessiką Bruder, speaking to us straight from New York City. Hello, Jessica. Thank you for making yourself available in this virtual format. And first of all, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Andrzej, and thank you everybody for coming today. I think the moment you said New York, I had an ambulance go by, so please forgive any ambient New Yorking that happens in the background. And yeah, thank you for the virtual hospitality. It's
of course, we are assuming it's a good sign, even though it's an ambulance. Let me start with a warm-up question. Would it be fair to say, Jessica, that Nomadland has revolutionized your life?
Yeah, but more maybe in terms of my way of thinking than in terms of my day-to-day. I mean, I'm still sitting here on the same couch in Brooklyn, calling sources, getting ready to teach a class, probably traveling a bit more. I was absolutely thrilled to be in Warsaw recently. It was my first time to Poland, and I only hope I get to come back because they had me running around like a lunatic, but it was a wonderful experience. So yeah, from outward appearances, apart from a little more travel, I think my life has stayed the same, but just the experience of working on this project and having a project in front of me that I felt so incredibly passionate about that even if nobody would have published it, I probably just would have spray painted it on a wall somewhere if I had to. And that just seeing it connect with people has been mind-blowing. Being in Poland, I was in Lodz and I was speaking at the Freedom Games, and a woman ran up to me and said in Polish, so it had to be translated, how is Linda May? And things like that just make me think back to the first time I met this woman I wrote about, who then appeared in the film. And yeah, it's unreal. So.
You just mentioned that you recently, not even a month ago, visited Poland, Warsaw. I think it was on September 11th to collect a very coveted, very prestigious Ryszard Kapuściński Award for literary reportage. I was just wondering, what is for you the importance of this award?
Well, obviously, I'm familiar with Kapuściński's work. He's globally renowned, but for me, I think some of the beauty of the moment was something I didn't anticipate, which was just coming to learn more about how strong the international community around literary journalism is, and just meeting the other writers from Poland, from Russia, from Brazil, and thinking about how we were doing, you know, what in some ways in the US is kind of a pretty niche thing, these kind of deep, long form, immersive work. But the fact that Poland it kind of brings together a community of this and celebrates it, for me, it made me feel like a part of something bigger than I realized is really out there. So that for me was...
Also because of the fact that Poles have a big and rich tradition in literary reportage, we are discerning readers. So I think it makes this award even more valuable, doesn't it?
It was incredibly moving. Yes.
Jessica, your journey with Nomadland starts both metaphorically and literally starts in 2014 when you wrote an article for Harper's Magazine. Did you, at this time, when you were writing the article, realize that you have a powerful story which will be perfectly suited for a major book, or not?
It's funny, I know what I think is important. And I feel like one of the things about gaining experience, I mean, I've been practicing journalism for, in a few years, it'll be 2 decades. I'm not there yet, but you get a little more confidence as you go, that the things that jump out at you, that keep you awake at night, the projects that you really feel that strongly about will hopefully resonate with other people, because if not, we are truly alone in the world, and that, okay, this is interesting to me, but no one else cares. So I didn't know for sure. I knew I cared. And then there was a huge reaction to the piece when it came out here in the States. I didn't know it would be on the cover of the magazine. I didn't know that I'd be doing media around it. And I didn't know that one particularly exceptional editor at one of the only major publishing houses in the US that's actually employee owned, which is kind of neat when you think about the subject of the book, that she would take an interest in it and actually approach me and say, you know, is this something that you would like to expand? And for me, the answer to that was obvious. I had so many questions that weren't answered, and just so much material that I couldn't cram into that magazine story. So once that happened, I was really ready to go, but I didn't walk into it thinking, this is going to be a cover story, that's going to be a book, that's going to be a film, and this woman I'm talking to will be co-starring with Frances McDormand. I mean, that would have been kind of grandiose and psychotic, but it's what happened.
Okay, so it was a process of gradually understanding that you have something truly explosive in your hands.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways I was so close to it that I think to do what I do, for me, I'm kind of a recovering shy person. So there's a lot of like, don't look down while you're doing it. Like, you really are trying to just do it rather than think the entire time about what the reception to it will be like, because you're already occupying so many places at once in your head, between interviewing people, learning about people, keeping track of things, learning about histories, figuring out how to structure it, that in some ways, what the public reception of it may or may not be has to become an afterthought, at least for me. It's basically, you spend several years of your life in a cave and you don't know when you come out if people will make you a birthday cake or if you will get eaten by a bear. But you have to know that you feel good about the work you produced in there, whether you get the bear or the birthday cake. And I didn't, I never thought anything was a guarantee. And part of me still wonders that if Trump hadn't been elected, and if people weren't, at least in the US, more attuned to certain issues of inequality, that have been a problem for a very long time. All the reporting in my book took place before Trump. But I think people were hungry to understand different things than they'd been hungry to understand before. So I never, took it as a sure shot that people would care. And I still wonder if the book had come out under different circumstances, we could have been on an entirely different timeline.
Speaking about understanding, your full title of the book goes like this: Nomadland, Surviving America in the 21st Century. And it paints quite a troubling picture of people who, following the financial meltdown of 2008, are forced to sell their houses. Did you realize when you started working on this project what was the sheer scale of this phenomenon, or it just gradually dawned on you?
I didn't, because I came into the story backwards. I didn't come into it as somebody who's examining the aftermath of the 2008 market crash. One thing I love writing about is subcultures. That's really a niche that I have. Essentially, people who find community and sometimes kind of non-blood kinship with people around them based on common affinities and often common adversities. So I'm interested in that. I've done a lot of writing on labor, and all of that came together when I was reading an article by a fine journalist, Gabe McClelland, who had written a piece for a magazine called Mother Jones. And it was a piece about what we all know now, but didn't then, which is just how hard the work is in Amazon warehouses. And this reporter had gone undercover and had a brief interaction with a fellow worker who said, I work here because I can't afford to retire. And I live in an RV full time. And then, and this is the sentence that really got me, Amazon has a whole program for people like us. And I was thinking, wait, people like you, who are you? And the biggest, most successful, or, air quotes on that, company in America and in some ways globally right now has a program for what amounts to geriatric migrant labor. What the hell is going on? And that's where really what my entry point was. So I really didn't know what was out there, and I kind of came into it backwards. So everything I learned was something new.
When you said about this person working at Amazon, I think this is the perfect moment to cite one of the most poignant quotations from your book. Actually, this is an entry from Bob's blog, which goes like this. At one point, there was a social contract that if you played by the rules, went to school, got a job, and worked hard, everything would be fine. That's no longer true today. You can do everything right, just the way society wants you to do, and still end up broke, alone, and homeless. Jessica, does this mean that the American dream is in peril?
Well, did we ever believe that the American dream was true or real? I mean, for me, that's the bigger question, right? Because particularly now, I think people are finally starting to not only say, okay, wait, maybe a moment ago we thought it was in peril, but wait, has it ever actually existed? Or was it always a myth? And a myth that now, and again, if we want to take it forward to present times, particularly in the age of the pandemic, is getting unmasked. Because the dream of equality, I mean, even if we're not talking about economic inequality, if you're looking at racism in this country, if you're looking at all sorts of, gender inequality, again, classism, if we want to talk about the American dream, the appropriate follow-up question has always been, who is this for, this American dream? And if it isn't for everyone, does it exist? Because one of the things it tells itself is that it's about equality. And if the equality isn't true, is the dream, it's a dream of a dream, right? It actually, it goes a little meta, and it becomes, a really nice story that people tell each other. And sometimes a story that might actually be used to justify gross inequality, because if anybody can make it, then if somebody hasn't made it, then it's fair to blame them, right? And I feel like we have this corrosive, really cruel attitude towards poverty in this country. And it came up in so many ways, large and small. One of them, just people I met didn't want to call themselves homeless. They wanted to call themselves houseless. And it's just because in the US, the word homeless has come to, it might as well be a curse word. It might as well be a pejorative. It doesn't mean someone who does not live in a house. It means a whole class of people you don't have to think about, and people have stereotypes about everybody has mental illness, everybody's addicted to stuff, everybody deserves what they got. And I think people feel that way because it helps them sleep better at night. And again, that's also a lie. I just remember reading in a newspaper months ago, there's a caption on a photograph saying that I think there was a donation store or something, and a gentleman was looking at shirts on a rack, and it said, homeless man selects shirt. And I was thinking, if this person were anyone else in any other set of circumstances, he would have a name and it would be printed, as opposed to this generic homeless man nonsense. So that was maybe a longer answer than you wanted, but now you know how I feel.
All right, and yet, after listening to what you've just said, for me, the book is still equally about the dark side of the American dream, as also about kind of a celebration of resilience and creativity of the people who decided to give up maybe their houses, but they've never given up hope. Is it for you also a tale of hope?
For me, it's always a mix. And I actually love it when people, I've had people come to me after reading the book, and some of them like this, and some tell me that they're very frustrated because they don't know how to feel. And why won't I tell them how to feel? Like, is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? And why can't we slot it? And reality is so much more complicated than that. So yeah, the people I met were among some of the most creative, resilient, and interesting people it's been my privilege to spend time with. And I think that really puts the lie to this crazy notion that you could lump all these people together and just make all sorts of assumptions about them. So for me, just having those contrasts in the book, just the darkness of the economic situation and the unfairness of it, and these people who are doing their best and essentially have come to think of themselves as conscientious objectors because they're all outside the mainstream society and they're essentially trying to build their own little world that will make up for the bits of the more mainstream culture that they just can't live in and aren't invited to share.
Speaking about these people, so the van dwellers, I assume, I don't know whether I'm right, that you are staying in touch with Linda and other people who took part in this project. And I was just wondering whether the fact that the book was published very successful, then the film Academy Award winner, has it changed their situation in any way whatsoever? And so first of all, are you staying in touch with them?
Yes, absolutely. And we're staying in touch with them more so than any other, than people in any other project I'd worked on, even before the film started happening. Although I guess I do that with a bunch of people. The person, if anyone who has seen the film, remembers the opening scene when Frances McDormand hugs an older gentleman outside a storage locker.
Right.
That guy's name is Gay DeForest, and I met him literally a decade ago when I was doing a story about Empire and the shutdown of that company town. Gay used to work there in the mine, and his wife ran human resources, which actually made her the best source ever because she knew everybody. In terms of how it's changed people's lives, I feel very lucky in that the people who ended up in the film, by and large, seem to feel very validated by the experience. And I feel very lucky because a lot of that was out of my hands, right? And I respected their decision to either do it or not do it. But, you know, once that was rolling, I knew there would just be so many things that wouldn't be within my control. So I feel glad for that. And I know that they seem to feel validated by the book as well. One of the best reactions to it for me was when Bob, who you just quoted, actually did a little reading of it on his blog, and it was probably the best book review and the most kindest I've gotten. Linda May is homesteading right now, the main person from the book, who is also in the film. She was able to get land and a fixer-upper house. Swanky's doing the same stuff she was doing before because she wants to. Bob is doing similar stuff. I think they have more of a cushion to fall back on now. Overall, I couldn't really tell you if it's impacted the entire culture, because I feel that the more research I do, the more I see that in the US, we still have growing numbers of laws that make it difficult and sometimes even illegal to sleep in a parked vehicle overnight. So while I feel like there's some more awareness and that some individual people's situation might have changed, I think overall there are more people on the road than there were before. And the sort of casual cultural cruelty is still happening. And that concerns me, particularly in the pandemic, when we could be on the brink of an eviction crisis. So, you know, when our eviction moratoriums wear off, these rules that were keeping landlords from kicking out tenants who were behind on rent, you know, when that can happen again, when banks can foreclose on people who aren't making their mortgage payments, I'm concerned we're going to have a lot more people out there using vehicles as shelters of last resort, which will be hard for them and also make it harder for the people who are there already. So I wish I could tell you that, you know, everything's better now. We fixed it, but it's not that simple.
We know, Jessica, that you are always painfully honest, and we very much appreciate it. And I also very much appreciate that you not only collected this very prestigious Ryszard Kapuściński Award in Warsaw recently, but you also are following into the footsteps of Ryszard Kapuściński, who always was feeling responsible for the people he was describing. And I feel the same attitude in your case.
Yeah, I feel also it's just, it's a huge responsibility to tell somebody's story, and it's somewhat terrifying. And when people actually trust you with that, it's incredibly generous. So I don't feel that I can just walk away. I don't feel like, okay, done with that, on to the next thing. Like, this is always going to be a part of my life, no matter where I am and what I'm doing.
Now let's get quickly to the process of developing this book. While you were writing, you were spending a lot of time in a camp van. You work at the Amazon warehouse. You even took part in the sugar beet harvest. Which of these experiences you consider most harrowing, most extreme?
Well, I've got to tell you, they're very different. So let me give you the pros and cons here. Amazon, when I was there, and I was there on each of these work sites for about a week. So I want to give you that disclosure, because my experience was limited. My job was to kind of get in and get out and learn, because I'd interviewed so many people who had done these jobs that I really just wanted to get in and see so I could tell the stories better. Amazon psychologically was just a mind killer. I mean, standing by yourself at the station through a whole shift and just kind of pulling items off this robot, squatting and stooping. I think for the older workers, the squatting and stooping was harder than it was for me. I was in a modern warehouse, so I'd interviewed people in their 70s who in the older, which they call legacy warehouses, had walked up to 15 miles a day on concrete floors and were getting all sorts of injuries. People still get injuries, but I think now a lot of the pressure too is just mental, in terms of it's extremely robotic work, and the quotas can be pretty tough. I mean, they really want to squeeze every last drop of productivity out of the meat that is your human body. So there's that. But in terms of physical exhaustion, the sugar beet harvest really beat me up. I hate to use the bad pun, but they call it the unbeatable experience, because they like to use cheerful imagery to try to bring people in. I can tell you it beat me down, but it wasn't unbeatable. I like puns, but not when they're used to exploit people. So yeah, that was exhausting. Again, those were 12-hour shifts on concrete. You're dirty, you're cold. I remember raising my hand to wave to somebody and just a big beet flying off a conveyor belt and just whacking my wrist, and thinking that's just kind of a metaphor for this whole experience. Yeah, I mean, I was there when a 7-foot steel pole that had broken off a piece of agricultural machinery started going up this conveyor belt. And if we hadn't done an emergency shutdown of this whole machine, it could have gone into a hopper where they're kind of spinning the dirt off the beets before putting them on a pile. And it could have just kind of javelined itself out into the ground crew. So we could have been shish kebab. I was very glad that didn't happen. I know somebody got hurt after I left. That was the job where I actually felt, I think I had Stockholm syndrome. I felt guilty when I left, because I had this I'm abandoning my crew moment. Thankfully, it was so bad that my crew also decided to abandon my crew. Within 3 days of my leaving, I think half of the team had quit. So,
and then living on and traveling in the camper, how was this experience? And what were the positives of this as well?
Oh, the positives were, so I grew up in the northeastern United States. I come from New Jersey, which is not known for its lovely landscapes. And so getting to explore the West Coast. I like nature a whole lot, getting out there and feeling self-contained, feeling like I have everything I need, I know where it is, and I'm in this giant exoskeleton that kind of enables me to go and do what I need to do wherever. There was just this there was a very liberating feeling for me about being in there, but, obviously not tempered with the same kind of worry that it might be if I were out there all the time, because, I always knew I was coming back here. And that really psychologically, I think, changes things, to be fair. The tough thing was I never really figured out how to stay warm. I've been told that maybe I just needed some warmer clothing, which is legit, but you can't run a propane heater while you sleep. And I remember one night when it was very cold in the winter in the desert, waking up through the night and hearing the people around me who were also not trying to use propane heaters overnight, just waking up, starting the vans to heat them and just running the heat so they could fall asleep, but then several hours later waking up cold and doing the whole thing over again. So that was kind of a uncomfortable thing I never really completely figured out how to fix.
Now, on a slightly different note, while researching for this book, you was gradually joining this community. Did you eventually had a sense of belonging, or you still felt that you are a kind of outsider? I'm just a reporter. I will do my research and then will disappear.
That's such an interesting thing that you bring up, because that conflict between those two standpoints are actually really important to what I do. That tension of insider and outsider. Because again, I think I would have to be grandiose at best or naive at worst, I don't know, to think that I was somehow fusing and merging with this group, when obviously that's not the circumstances of my life. I was not dispossessed by the Great Recession. I haven't been foreclosed on. So the idea of saying, I can do this for a while, and now I'm one of these people, so you should listen to me, I'm very insightful. I think that would be grandiose. But for me, the idea of immersing, we do have a whole tradition called immersion journalism or participant observation. The idea is not to merge with your subject, but to get really close to it so you can do justice when you tell it. But the problem is, if you become it, you can't see it anymore. I believe that if you want to see the center, you kind of need to look in from the edge sometimes. So there's value to being an outsider. One of my great heroes, the writer Ted Conover, spent a year undercover in Sing Sing, which is a notorious prison in upstate New York. And when his book came out, one of the prison guards came up to him at a reading and said, "Why do you get to write this book? I've been here 40 years. Like, I should write the book." And it would have been a very different book, right? And I think Ted said, well, you should also write a book. But the point of what we do is to be inside and outside at the same time. And you can't forget that you're outside. And you want people who are around you to feel comfortable with you and treat you like part of the furniture, but you also want them to know that you're not under this illusion that you're somehow merging with your subject.
Once you finish writing your research, your work, and return to the normal life, however normal it could have been under the pandemic circumstances, have it ever crossed your mind that I will give it all up and I will hit the road again? I just want to become a nomad. Have you ever, even for a fleeting moment, had such a feeling?
Oh, well, everybody has escape fantasies, right? I wish I could we could do a show of hands with the audience. Maybe that would be fun. Has anybody here ever had an escape fantasy? Can we say interactive Zoom? Oh my gosh, some people aren't raising their hands. Okay, you're probably more mentally healthy than the rest of us. Good for you. Yeah, no, I've obviously, it's crossed my mind, but at the end of the day, I feel pretty lucky to have what I think many people might desire given the opportunity, which is to have the ability to go out and wander, but also to come back. I have plants that I've been able to keep alive for years, which is kind of a miracle. I have a dog. I know the pharmacist on the corner of my block. I have friends I go bike riding with around here. I teach at this university where I went when I'm an adjunct. I'm kind of a barnacle on that big boat, but where I was 2003. So for me, I like some of that continuity, but I also chafe at continuity and routine. And I think that's one of the reasons I found journalism so appealing, is that I'm really eager to learn new things and to put myself in new situations and stretch my comfort zone. I get anxious when I'm out of my comfort zone, but I think I get more anxious if I'm marinating in my comfort zone for too long. I'm always terrified of stagnation. So yeah, I have thought about it. I actually went out to the van over the summer for the first time since the pandemic started, and it had been.
You had some kind of a withdrawal syndrome, right?
Yeah, totally. And also you come back and my life just felt weird. And I felt like I was on the set of a TV show, but the TV show was really boring. And, and the pandemic happened. So the van sat in my friend's backyard in Nevada for a year and a half. It got completely chewed up by field mice, just savage. They had like a whole party. So I just went out there, and I remember somebody asking me, I was doing an interview while I was out there on Zoom. and somebody was saying, wanted to know if the movie had changed my life and if I was living this completely different life. And I said, well, this afternoon, I spent 5 hours in a respirator cleaning mouse turds out of the van with a bottle of Lysol. So if you want a little insight on the glamour, there you have it.
All right, now let us turn to the movie, which is based on your book, because it's not just a movie. It was one of the most famous movies recently. When you first saw the film, were you speechless with delight or utterly disappointed?
You give me these binary choices and I'm saying, man, reality is more complicated. I'm teasing you.
Maybe, but...
Right? We don't know each other that well, but I feel like I can give you a hard time, which is a good sign.
Please.
Yeah, so again, those might be a little, I think what I felt was a little more complex. I mean, we'd all been cooped up in the pandemic too. So I think seeing these vast landscapes, just that alone was incredibly moving to me. I realized almost instantly that I was a completely non-neutral, not objective viewer of this film, because suddenly I was seeing Linda May. I mean, this woman who I'd followed around for 3 years, who, if you told either of us when I first met her and asked if I could pet her dog, she jokes about writing a memoir called Can I Pet Your Dog? Because apparently that's what I said to her when I timidly approached her for an interview. Just the whole thing was so nuts, just seeing that opening scene where somebody I interviewed 10 years ago, Gay, is hugging Frances McDormand, seeing Bob, seeing Swanky, seeing Linda, and seeing how incredible they were. And just, yeah, it was incredibly moving for me, but I didn't feel like I had anything that would resemble a film critic's response to the film. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I just had a very powerful emotional experience that it's kind of just like listening to a bittersweet song where, again, it's not happy or sad, but it's strong and it's emotionally strong, and it felt right. It felt like a match for the subject matter, if that makes sense.
The reason I ask in this slightly provocative way is not without a reason. I think you must have had an ambivalent feeling, because on one hand, this film was hugely successful, got Oscars, and helped to promote the book and the whole story. On the other hand, it clearly distorts and muffles the book's message. So how did you feel about that?
Yeah, so I don't even know if I would put it that way, but let me back up a little and explain kind of how I came into this project. I think books of investigative long-form narrative nonfiction do different things from Hollywood feature films. And I think if I had believed that they were accomplishing the same things, I might have had different feelings when I saw the film. I know that there are many authors who also absolutely see something and feel like, oh my God, they made a hash of my work. I knew this wasn't going to be an investigative documentary story. I knew I was hoping that they would capture some emotional truths about what it's like to be out there. And to the degree that it felt real and recognizable to me, I was happy. And it's interesting too, because I have done a little bit of film work, not a ton. I mean, I consulted on Nomadland, which is obviously the biggest thing I've done that way, but I worked with a great filmmaker named Brett Story to do a film. I know there were people who really wanted to see more of the dark things that happen at Amazon when they watched Nomadland, and expected it to be more one-to-one with the book. And I keep directing them to this short documentary film I made with this woman, Brett Story, that actually has undercover footage that I shot. It's not very good. I'm not a great cinematographer, from the Amazon warehouse, and talks about camper force. But again, that's a very niche thing that I don't feel like, I wish that had the same mass audience that larger budget Hollywood features have. I wish our culture was more balanced between book readers and moviegoers and all sorts of culture. But I also, to some extent, feel like we're all on the same team. And I feel like in the US, particularly right now, the left can be a circular firing squad. If we're not hard enough, if we're not perfect enough in our activism, there's a lot of we should all be chopping each other to pieces, when I do feel like, in a general sense, we're all on the same team and the world is burning. So I try not to participate in that. Sorry, that was a really long answer. Does that make any sense? We can go deeper with it if you want. I'm not trying to
at the
skip
same
around
time,
it.
you know, I just can't help but to give you a quotation from Jan, who just said in the chat box, "Hollywood never lets the truth stand in the way of a good story."
I know that quote. There's another quote, and I'm not going to say that's true in this case, but that Hollywood likes its writers dead.
Let me also use a quote of Jessiką Bruder, who recently, when receiving Jerzy Kapuściński Award, said about it, "It's not a Hollywood tale. It's a story about elderly Americans living precarious lives." And still you gave them the permission to adapt it for the screen. And the reason I'm asking about is that in the film, we have a sense that the people who are houseless are choosing this status. In your book, they are forced to do it, right? So that's...
But it's complicated even in the book. So let me share this with you too. In a book, a lot of the people I meet, when I first meet them, they tell me that they're on a great adventure and that it's this entirely self-directed, chosen thing, right? And then when I've spent more time with them, I hear about, you know, the 2008 market crash. I hear about medical debt, every kind of debt you could imagine, student debt, and I just hear about all the crushing economic forces. But if I went back to those same people and I said, they would still tell me they chose it, because in their minds, okay, van dwelling is a very specific thing. Maybe you could have chosen to live on the street. Maybe you could have chosen to burden your nephew and live on his couch, even though you have a lot of pride and you don't really want to do that. So it's something, I've heard this term that I think is interesting called constrained agency. So the idea is that there are things we think of choices as in, well, you could choose anything, you know, but even if you can't choose from a wide array of choices, for the people I met, taking this path, which you have to do a lot of things to make it work. You can't really just default it and hope that your van life is going to be fine. So for those people, they did consider it a choice. And I realized that choice had also become kind of a proxy for agency and dignity. So I didn't want to be the asshole that told them, like, you know, no, you were made to do this. You know, somebody told you, somebody held a stick over your head and said you should pick living in a van. You can't go sleep on your nephew's couch, because they did have to do some planning and some proactive things to make it happen. But yeah, there were a lot of things. There was a lot of push and some pull. And I feel like a lot of people, when they were in the life long enough, also like to talk about the relief they felt from getting out of debt and not feeling that sinking terror when it came to make the rent or the mortgage payment every month. So some people, and I think people do tend to bright side their own stories, which is why I always try to give economic context, which again is easier to do in a book than a movie, that says, you know, okay, people are talking about choice, but it's choice within this structure. I mean, we could also argue if anybody really has free will, but I don't think we need to go down that rabbit hole. So for me, the issue of choice is really complicated. And does the film go more to the choicey, freedomy thing than the book does? I think the book kind of walks this uneasy line, okay, which is at least my goal, between sharing
a much more nuanced way.
Yeah, but again, books get to do that. That's why I like books, right? Like I'm still on team books. Like I like the film, but I'm not going out to make feature films next. Like I'm team book. But I think as movies go, they did a great job. But maybe my expectations for what it is and could be are different from other people's. And I'm not, you'll laugh, I'm not a big film nerd. I actually didn't grow up watching a lot of movies. I'm a total book person. People make fun of the fact that I'm actually pretty film illiterate, I'll confess to you. There are many movies that I'm sure all of you have seen and I have not. So again, I'm one person and not a film critic, but that's my take.
So I'm not asking about Polish classical films, but now for something much less controversial. Frances McDormand, is it for you the most ideal female lead in this film? And did you have a chance to interact with her? How was this cooperation relationship?
So, Andrzej, your question is great. I want to share a question I got that was not as great as yours that just cracked me up. somebody asked me when the film wasn't out yet from a publication called The Hollywood Reporter, if when I was out there reporting, if I imagined the perfect leading woman in the role of Linda May, and who was that person? And again, as somebody who's not a film person to begin with, and was really just scrambling to like stay warm and figure out how I was going to tell the story, I was laughing so hard, just the idea that I was sitting there, you know, sipping a martini and speculating about who might play this role when this thing gets optioned to become a feature. It just really cracked me up. But again, given that my film knowledge is not so hot, I was familiar with the work of Frances McDormand, so that says a lot. All right, if I'm movie stupid and I know her work, right? And I was familiar with the kind of nuanced character she's played, and I know that aging in Hollywood has been challenging for a really long time, particularly for women. And I know that Frances is one of the few people who's really managed to buck that and just say, I'm going to be who I am and find a way to get people to actually celebrate that. So I know she's a great talent. So when she came to option the book, I figured, again, like you said, this really doesn't seem like a story that suits itself to stereotypical Hollywood. It lacks the crucial elements of sex, drugs, violence, youth, wealth, money, you know, just everything you might think. No car chases either. So I figured if anybody could pull it off, and it's no guarantee anyone will, it could probably be Frances. I did meet her on the set, and it was really interesting because the time I spent on the set was towards the end of the shooting. It was in Quartzsite, Arizona, when they were reconstructing the rubber tramp rendezvous. And at that point, she was pretty much in character all the time. She'd been doing it for a very, very long time. She had a bit of a 1,000-yard stare. She was lovely. I also think she was tired. I remember her coming back from California and just helping wheel some humidifiers into the production room at the Best Western for the, the film team. So she seemed really hands-on and like she'd connected with it. And I was glad for that. And I think that did come out in the film.
Totally. This film features not only professional actors, but also actual van dwellers. I was just wondering, what was their reaction, their review of the film when they saw it?
Yeah, I feel like my answer to this is too easy. I feel like I should have somebody who to tell you about who hated it and felt like exploited or really upset. But honestly, everybody I talked to has been pretty excited about it. And for me, one of the best moments was we'd all been cooped up in the pandemic, and the movie was actually supposed to come out a year earlier than it did. So in movie time, a year, it came out so quickly in Hollywood time from when the book came out. But when you're actually focusing on it and thinking about it and waiting on it, feels like it's never going to come out. So when the pandemic was happening, I was saying, the one thing or the two things that will get me on a plane, and the only two, are a medical emergency in my family, or if this damn movie comes out. So my partner and I got to fly to Los Angeles, where they were having a screening at a drive-in. I'm laughing when you're saying that the film's playing at a film festival there, because if any of you get to see it in an actual movie theater, that's something I haven't yet had the opportunity to do. I've seen it on my laptop. I've gone to a drive-in. I hear the sound is fantastic, so I envy you that. But seeing at the very end when Swanky and Linda and Bob and Derek, who plays like the drifter kid, who's fantastic. He also ended up being a PA on the film. They just picked him up on the road. They were all up there answering audience questions at the Q&A. And the whole crowd, it was like a scene from Mad Max. Everybody's there in their cars and they're flashing their headlights and honking their horns and just completely validating the experiences that Linda and Bob and Swanky and Derek are talking about. And I know they felt really good about that. And as we've stayed in touch, I know they continue to, and I think that's good. I remember somebody getting pulled over by a police officer and saying like, I'm in this book, and holding up Nomadland and thinking, I don't think Nomadland's going to get you out of a speeding ticket, but your mileage maybe.
But then there's a moment when this film receives Academy Awards, and I'm thinking, what is your how do you feel about it? You feel at the pinnacle of your world, the book that you wrote, then put on the screen, becomes one of the most important films of this year. What was going through your mind?
That's not the pinnacle of my world. Like I write books, right? This is like crazy adventure in movie land. It's kind of like, it's amazing, but I also felt like I was watching it from a distance, kind of overhead. Like I was watching.
The whole world is talking about the story that you helped to expose, I think.
Yeah, which is completely nuts. And I still, I mean, my agent told me in the very beginning that if I said, "That's crazy," one more time, she was going to hit me with a frying pan. And thankfully she hasn't, but I haven't stopped saying it's crazy, because it is. It's completely bizarre. I know that I care about it deeply and I work very hard on it, but in reality, there's also luck and chance and opportunity. And I think it's completely nuts that it happened. I mean, I think it's fantastic. For me, the most exciting thing about that Oscar was getting to hang out when Linda and Swanky were getting ready for their red carpet moment. And they were with the stylist and getting their hair and makeup done. And I was taking pictures for their families. I mean, I was probably documenting it too much. There's a picture of Linda getting a PCR test that morning. And as a joke, I'm kind of photobombing her. I'm hanging over her shoulder. And where my hand is, it actually looks like I'm sticking the swab up her nose, which I had to clarify to her daughter I was not. But just taking them out to the car that was picking them up to take them to the ceremony, I felt like I was sending my elders off to the high school dance or something. Like it was a completely interesting, awesome feeling. So that's what I'll never forget. I took some pictures that weren't involving Linda's nose and the swab, so I'll have good memories.
You hope so.
I think so.
Changing the tag a little bit, at some point you said that you would like the politicians to buy the whole edition of your book and then take care for the people who you describe. Do you have a feeling that they followed your call?
I have no idea. I don't even remember saying that. I'm sure I did. I know people are watching the movie and going to the book because of that. Apparently Obama listed it in like his 10 favorite movies of whatever. At some point I went and spoke with some people in the Senate. Are people paying direct attention? Again, I think it would be narcissistic to say, okay, look, now these regulations are happening and it's totally because of Nomadland. I think it takes a lot of little projects to shift a big picture. And the way I think about it is if this project gets to be a handful of pixels in a larger picture of change, that's fantastic. But I don't expect that I'm going to get to see, that somebody found Nomadland, ran for president, and then it fixed America. I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath on that, but I'd obviously support it. But how much can Biden do in the time he's given? We'll see. But it's interesting to see that things like antitrust law are being spoken about and maybe even enforced a little bit again in the US after being neglected for so long. There is talk about what it means to have a monopoly. And there is more scrutiny of the workplace. I mean, the National Labor Relations Board is looking into Amazon illegally thwarting an effort for a group to start a union in Bessemer, Alabama. So I feel like there's much more of an eye on the company than there is before. Again, I can't tell you that will actually bear fruit and make things better in the long term, but it's more hopeful than it was when I was writing.
Jessica, our time is slowly running out. So now for a necessary wrap-up question. Now you are a world-recognized and really accomplished author. What comes next for Jessiką Bruder?
Same old, same old. I mean, and it's funny, I wish I could talk to you about the projects I'm working on right now, but because they're also grassroots, like anybody could have gone out there and found and talked to Linda May. So when I'm on a project like that, I can't talk about it. So I can't tell you what I'm working on will be the next Nomadland, but I'm in the same headspace of going out there, finding those stories that haunt me and don't let me sleep and throwing myself at them. I'm just really grateful to be vaccinated. So that's more of a possibility. It's hard to immerse in lockdown and in isolation. And like everyone else, I felt like I would chew my own arm off. They didn't let me out. So yeah, I'm back at it. I'm teaching, I'm reading, I'm out in the world. I I'd be very surprised if the next book I wrote, the whole path has been so surprising, and I don't take any of it for granted. Again, when I was working on Nomadland, all I knew was that I cared about it. And when I look back at the whole experience, kind of working on it and getting to do it was the best part, not people clapping for it, right? So I'm happy to be back in that generative space again and making something new. And, you know, maybe a bear will eat me when I come out of the cave next time. I don't know, but I think it's all part of.
Can you at least share with us whether this project, this mysterious project you're working on, also requires this kind of sacrifice, or also entails this kind of extreme commitment, just like your previous book?
I never thought of it as sacrifice, not for a moment. But I'll commit as hard on any of this.
Let's call it an extreme journalism.
Okay. I'm not sure yet, to be honest with you. I'm making plans to immerse, but it all depends on how much you can get. And you don't know if it's going to work until you're doing it, which is terrifying, right? I mean, people could have told me to go away very easily. I mean, maybe it would have been more sane for them to tell me to go away. I might have told me to go away. So I am working on immersion, but it's slow and it's not easy. And that's kind of how Nomadland was too. So hopefully we can talk about this again on the other end.
We can. And of course, we're keeping our fingers crossed for your next project. I'm absolutely sure it's at least equally extreme. And with that, I would like to thank you, Jessica, very much for first writing the book, which is so unbelievable, stunning, and beautiful, and also for agreeing to speak to us in this virtual way. Thank you very much. Good luck. And with that, I'll get it over to Elizabeth.
Thanks, Andrzej. Yes, a huge thank you to you, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining us. And Andrzej, our wonderful moderator. And thank you to all of you who joined tonight. If you're interested in similar events in the future, please do follow the Embassy on Facebook and Instagram. We always post about all of our events there, and we have more coming up in the months ahead. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thank you very much.